Hi, this is Joe, back with Joe, and today we're talking about data transparency in Singapore. Imagine you're a graduate researcher looking into Singapore's aging population. With your limited funding, it's difficult to do a large-scale study on your own. Thankfully, Singapore's Central Provident Fund, or CPF, did a longitudinal study of over 20,000 Singaporeans on just this topic. So you need the data, the government has the data. Should be a pretty straightforward process, right? Unfortunately for researcher Shannon Ang, this was a 6-year-long journey through Byzantine bureaucracy. His first request was denied in 2017 due to data unavailability, and in 2019 he was directed to collaborate with different government agencies to obtain the data. So he partnered with MOH, submitted all of the paperwork, and in 2021, MOH terminated the partnership. In these 4 years, by the way, Ang went from being a graduate student all the way to an assistant professor at NTU. In 2022, he went through MOE instead, resubmitting his application with feedback from the Ministry of Family and Social Development. Surprise, surprise, denied again. And here lies the reality of data transparency in Singapore. While front-end institutions for data application are clear and transparent, the back-end processes of decision-making are often obscured. And this is epitomized in Ang's 6-year-long journey of rejection through multiple agencies. All without clear reason, by the way, and in spite of the support, encouragement, and guidance from the ministries themselves. All of these experiences are symptoms of Singapore's closed-by-default governance model. This means that the onus falls on the data user, the citizen or the researcher, to justify the disclosure of data rather than the data holder, usually the government, to justify the withholding of this data. Switching to the latter is imperative for fostering an informed and engaged citizenry. By providing opportunities for independent researchers and citizens to monitor government performance, transparency can strengthen government accountability and policy evaluation. Prime Minister Lawrence Wong said during his swearing-in that everyone will have a say in shaping our way forward and building our shared future. For I firmly believe that a more open and engaged society will strengthen, not weaken Singapore. At the moment, our closed-by-default data governance structure is constraining our ability to live up to these democratic ideals. For instance, we lack access to accurate and meaningful data on a variety of issues, and anyone from researchers to members of parliament have had their requests for data access denied with no clear reason given. We're also kept in the dark about the timeline of the process, who is involved, and if an appeals process is even available. Furthermore, without a full catalog of existing datasets, we don't even know what kind of data is out there for us to examine. Even if you did manage to jump through all of the hoops and get your request approved, the usage of this data is often highly conditional. This opaque approach to data governance has created very noticeable gaps in our knowledge. For example, we don't know how many migrant worker deaths occur in our country each year, nor do we know the racial or socioeconomic breakdown of student enrollment in our universities. Even when the data is available, it could potentially present a skewed or curated picture. And without knowledge of the definitions or methodology used, we'd be none the wiser. Take inequality in income distribution, for example. The Gini coefficient is a conventional metric used to measure inequality. And according to SingStat, Singapore's Gini coefficient and thus inequality has been going down since 2013. But if we look into the calculation of this Gini coefficient, we find out that there are some aspects that have been obscured. For example, we only look into income generated from work and ignore things like dividends and rental income. This means that we could be vastly underestimating the incomes of Singapore's wealthy. The calculation also omits a significant portion of Singapore's resident population. For example, short-term workers. In such cases, it's obvious why we should push for greater transparency and honesty towards each other. For example, if people of a particular race are disproportionately imprisoned, or if wealth is disproportionately concentrated in the top percentiles, does this not hint at structural inequities that need correcting? By the way, this is not to say that dishonesty and inequities exist at this moment. However, without access to data to explore potential inequities, we are denying ourselves the opportunity to have well-informed conversations and discussions about these salient policy issues. The weak presence of a data transparency movement in Singapore can be attributed to the fact that we think of data primarily as an economic resource and secondarily as a political one. On the other hand, in the public sector, data collected by the government through the census, commissioned surveys, ministries' research, and empirical observation can help improve policy making and public service delivery. That's exactly how we want data to be used, by the way, to improve the lives of citizens. But this potential could be maximized with greater data transparency. This means that independent or institutionally affiliated researchers could come up with alternative policy solutions backed by data-driven research. After all, the more minds, the better, right? Furthermore, political scientist Damar Karan argues that as a form of information, data plays a critical role in revealing public sentiment and areas of injustice in need of mobilization. In Singapore's specific political context, institutionalizing data transparency means that we level a playing field that has been tilted over decades by information asymmetry that has privileged the ruling party. This means that every party and every citizen will have access to data from which conclusions are drawn. From there, we'll be able to judge the data, methodology, and analysis for ourselves. This way, no individual citizen or politician can be the sole arbiter of truth. Just like the government can fact-check citizens through POFMA, we should be able to fact-check them too, right? If you think all of this sounds unrealistic, let's have a look at Malaysia's data governance model. Our two systems share several foundational similarities, such as the Official Secrets Act. This confers broad authority to the government to arbitrate on what sorts of information to withhold and which ones to share. Neither country's act provides clear criteria on classification and declassification. But in recent years, our models have been diverging because Malaysia is considering an open by default model instead. Two states, Penang and Selangor, have already started implementing their own forms of open by default models. This means that any individual can access government records by submitting a formal request to the relevant agency or ministry. If these requests are denied, the agencies must provide written justification and the requester has a right to appeal. These appeals are then reviewed by an independent body. And this is just the start. In Malaysia, a lot of work is being done by civil society organizations and think tanks, all who come together to champion data transparency. In Singapore, there has also been a growing recognition of data transparency as a social justice cause in recent years. Campaigning by groups like Aware of Migrant Death Map and a recent debate on minimum income standards have underscored the need for more and better data on poverty, income, and wages in Singapore. It's clear that data and data transparency doesn't exist in isolation. Importantly, this movement has to continue to expand to bring into its fold groups that champion other social causes. After all, data and data transparency affects everyone, and any movement to institutionalize it must embody this reality. Let's work towards a shared future where no one has a monopoly on our shared story. If you're interested in reading more about data transparency in Singapore and the region, the link to the full JOM article is in the bio as always. Thank you so much for sticking around. Let's continue the discussion in the comments, and I'll see you next time.